Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Andrew Olson, and you are watching a classic cinema review. The Thin Man, directed by W.S. Van Dyke and released by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayor in 1934. The film opens in the workshop of inventor Clyde Wynant, who is conducting an experiment. His experiment is interrupted by his daughter Dorothy and her boyfriend Tommy announcing their engagement. Dorothy is adamant that he walks her down the aisle and announces that the wedding is scheduled for just after Christmas. Wynant reluctantly agrees, but announces he's going away on a trip later that evening. It has something to do with one of his latest inventions, but he can't state where he's going to anyone. He does, however, promise to be back in time for the wedding. As Wynant is about to leave, his lawyer, Herbert Macaulay, stops by and insists on knowing where Wynant is going in case he needs to get in touch with him for business reasons. Wynant refuses to say and leaves Macaulay behind. Wynant checks off his safe on his way out the door, looking for $50,000 in government bonds that he intended for Dorothy's wedding present, only to find that they're missing. Tanner, the office bookkeeper, says that Julia Wolfe, Wynant's secretary, probably has them. At Julia Wolfe's apartment, Wynant is confronted by Joe Morelli, a nightclub owner and old friend of Julia's, who is a pretty tough character but leaves them alone, seeing as how Wynant is the boyfriend. When questioned about the missing bonds, Julia argues that Wynant's family of loafers don't deserve any more money from him, while she has been devoted to him for many years and therefore deserves something. Wynant threatens to turn her over to the police, however, but she relents, saying she'll give him $25,000 out of the $50,000 as that's all she has. Their argument is interrupted by a mysterious phone call. Wynant picks it up, but the caller on the other end remains silent, and Wynant is simply left to wonder who it is. Julia asks Wynant what he's planning to do, but he merely gives her an evil sneer and leaves. On Christmas Eve, Dorothy hasn't heard a word from her father, and as she and Tommy dance at a nightclub, Tommy tries to comfort her and reassure her everything will be fine. Moments later, Dorothy spots an old acquaintance, Private Detective Nick Charles, over at the bar. He solved a case for her father years ago, hence their acquaintance or their relationship. Dorothy asks Nick if he has seen or heard from her father, but he has just gotten back from California with his wife. He's been out there for 4 years and therefore knows nothing of Wynant's whereabouts. Later, Dorothy tells her family about her little chat with Nick Charles to less than preferred fanfare. Her mother, Mrs. Mimi Jorgensen, Wynant's ex-wife, needs money desperately, and she usually gets it from Wynant's secretary, Julia Wolfe. She calls Julia, who agrees to meet with her. Later, when Mimi arrives at Julia's apartment, however, she finds Julia murdered. With Wynant missing, or at least being unavailable to be reached, he becomes the prime suspect, and the hunt for his whereabouts turns into front-page news. Later in the month, Nick and Nora Charles are throwing a thoroughly entertaining New Year's Eve party at their hotel suite, when people from the murder mystery, people related to it at least, start showing up asking for Nick's help with the case. First Dorothy, then her mother Mimi, and her brother Gilbert follow suit. They are followed closely behind by the newspaper reporters wondering about everybody's involvement in the case. Nick and Nora deny any involvement truthfully and with much humor as well, but later that morning, the very wee hours, they are visited by Joe Morelli, who insists that he had nothing to do with the murder, which is news to them, and then the police promptly show up soon after, leaving Nick with little choice but to take the case, as he and Nora have been thrust into the mix whether they want to be or not. The couple tackle the case full of cheaters, chiselers, leechers, and liars that lead them across New York City hunting for the missing Wynant and anybody else who could possibly have been involved in Julia Wolfe's murder. Everything comes to a head at a fancy, high-class dinner party where everyone is gathered, and Nick Charles reveals the truth about the murder. This is a fantastic movie. The Thin Man is based on the book of the same name, written by... it's Dashiell Hammett. I'm not sure of the author's first name pronunciation. I don't know how to pronounce it properly. I've heard it pronounced both ways. So for the sake of this video, I'll simply refer to him as Mr. Hammett. The movie is a great example of how source material needs to be treated with respect. Granted, there were a few changes. The adaptation of the book to film is not verbatim. However, I wouldn't expect it to be. Some things written on the page don't translate perfectly to film. Changes to the movie, or from the book to the movie, include minor changes to some of the secondary characters' names. For instance, Chris Jorgensen, who was played by Cesar Romero, I think it was Christian Jorgensen in the book. It's been about 12 or 13 years since I read the book. It was a good book, but it's been quite a while. Joe Morelli and Herbert Macaulay are other characters that had minor differences between the book and the movie. Nothing major. The movie lacked a lot of character development. I wish there would have been a little bit more character development for these secondary characters which I'm referring to. The lack of development for each character does not affect the mystery. It doesn't really affect the story. Everybody related to the murder is pieced together. You can see how they're all related to each other in one form or another, and how they relate to the murder, and how all of them are indeed viable suspects. So I would imagine the lack of character development was probably done to keep the pace of the film moving. That's the only reasonable explanation I can come up with, but it's no big deal. It's just one of the minor differences between the two. There were a few lines that were ad-libbed and a few scenes that were either added to the film or taken away from the book and not filmed, or at least edited out of the film, due to the fact, again, to probably pacing and just keeping things flowing naturally in terms of story. Mr. Hammett worked with the writing team of Albert Hackett and Francis Goodrich, a husband and wife writing team who wrote the script. As a matter of fact, they wrote the script for the next 2 or 3 Thin Man films, and we'll get to the sequels in just a moment. I would imagine Mr. Hammett had say over what changes were made, and I would imagine, at least I would hope, he gave his blessing. So the story from the book is carried over to the film well. I can't complain about that. There are only the minor differences between the two. Let me see here. This is not a special effects heavy film. The effects that I'm going to talk about briefly are mainly lighting effects. There are a few scenes that kind of are precursor to the film noir genre, which appeared roughly 10 years later. You get the really long shadows and the moody atmosphere that go well with a murder mystery. The performances by the actors are also noteworthy. Everybody in the film does a good job and gives a solid performance across the board. The two main characters of Nick and Nora Charles, played by William Powell and Myrna Loy, they're fun characters to watch. There's almost an air or an element of screwball comedy between the two. They're married. They're fun-loving individuals. They have an air of sophistication no matter where they go or what they do, but they banter humorously and make fun of each other on and off. Nick Charles has his own comedic quirks, and his wife Nora always has a rather humored look about her whenever he's off doing something funny. Just because Nick and Nora have a humorous nature to their relationship doesn't mean they don't care for each other, though. They go out of their way to make sure the other one is kept safe whenever there's danger, trying to keep one from getting shot by a stray bullet or getting beat up by a suspect who's out of line, or making sure one has an ice pack after too much alcohol at a party, and so on and so forth. But they do genuinely care for each other, and that makes them as fictional characters that much more endearing. Powell and Loy had excellent chemistry. This movie is noteworthy for that. That's one of the reasons why this is such a well-known film, is because of their portrayal of these characters. But everybody in the film does a solid job of delivering in terms of performance. Let me run down the actors list real quick, and then I'll get to the director. William Powell, Myrna Loy, Maureen O'Sullivan plays Dorothy Wynett, Nat Pendleton as Lieutenant John Guild, Porter Hall, Natalie Moorhead, William Henry, Minna Gombel, Cesar Romero, Harold Hubert, Henry Wadsworth, Edward Ellis, Edward Brophy, and Cyril Thornton round out the principal cast. The solid performances across the board I can only attribute to, well, obviously the actors are talented people, but the director, W.S. Van Dyke, he was born Woodbridge Strong Woody Van Dyke II. It's a bit of a tongue twister there for you. He was known as a one-take wonder in Hollywood. He wanted his actors to be at ease and comfortable on set. That way they wouldn't be nervous when the camera was recording them, and thus they would give the best performance that they could. He would achieve this by, there were a few ways, but one of the noteworthy ones, at least for me, was he would often tell he would tell his actors to run through a scene, do a rehearsal on set, and he would tell them that the crew was just checking lights, sound, camera, so forth. And then while the rehearsal was happening, he was recording them without them knowing it. They would deliver a solid performance, and anything ad-libbed was left in there, and that actually can be seen, or it can be noted during the scene of the introduction of Nick Charles. That scene apparently was filmed in this manner. William Powell was told just run through the scene, and at the end of the scene he heard Van Dyke yell, "Cut. Print it." It was a hilarious scene. It was a great scene. Maureen O'Sullivan is there, and it's solid. There's solid performance from everybody. So Van Dyke, he knew how to get good, solid performances. He knew how to keep people at ease. Maybe I could only guess that actors, or at least some of them, wouldn't appreciate him doing that to them. However, when you go back and watch this movie, you can tell that he did the right thing. The musical score was done by William Axt. A-X-T is the spelling of his last name. This is an early 30s film, so you've got 20s and early 30s jazz, very bouncy and upbeat, positive music for things like the club scenes and anytime there's a party or something going on, like at the Charles's hotel suite, for instance. And then there are some darker, more moody tones to add emotional weight to other scenes as well. The music fit the movie. I can't complain about it. There's really nothing that really stood out, but without it the movie wouldn't be what it is. There is one thing about this movie. It's not a complaint. But there is one thing about the movie that a lot of people mistake or get wrong, if you will, and that is about the title, or who the title is referring to. A lot of people think that the Thin Man is referring to Nick Charles. He's tall and he's thin. And there were 6 films made with the Thin Man title. However, if you watch the movie, the scene where Nick and Nora are leaving their hotel suite and they meet Lieutenant John Guild down on the sidewalk in front of the hotel, Nick remarks that everybody's going to be looking for a tall, white-haired man, or a tall, thin man with white hair. Now, Nick doesn't have white hair, and everybody's looking for Wynette. I'll leave it there. You figure out the rest. This is a solid film. I really have nothing else to complain about or to really pick apart. It's one of those classics that if you're not into these old movies, if somehow you ended up at this video and you're on the fence about watching The Thin Man or any old films from this from this era, start here. It's a great starting point. The quality of the film is high, the performances are great, the film is well balanced. Everything is balanced so that you just kind of go along for the ride and enjoy the adventure. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 star rating. I almost forgot the sequels. There were 5 sequels to this movie. That should give you another indication of just how popular this film was when it came out. You don't get 5 sequels from a mediocre movie. It just doesn't happen. The same general team worked on the next few films, next 2 or 3. Mr. Hammett wrote stories for the next 2. Albert Hackett and Francis Goodrich, the husband and wife screenwriting team, also worked on the next few films along with him. W.S. Van Dyke directed the next few, and of course William Powell and Myrna Loy reprised their roles as Nick and Nora Charles for all of them. I won't delve any deeper into the sequels, but if you would like me to review those movies, please let me know in the comments down below. There's been a rumor flying around for the last 10 or 15 years or so that this movie is going to be remade. I hope Hollywood never remakes it, because I can't see anybody, especially nowadays, doing any better. It's a period piece based on a book that came out right around the same time, and the movie does the book justice. I highly recommend it. I got to thank Jerry once again from drmacro.com for giving me all of the prints, posters, and the like. Check out his website, drmacro.com. I'll leave a link in the description below. There's lots more stuff on his website, and I'm ashamed to say that he gave me all of these wonderful images over a year ago, and I'm just now getting around to making this video. So to Jerry, I apologize for the delay, but life happens. What can I say? But thank you, Jerry, nonetheless. I got to thank all of you for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. I plan on having at least one more of these out before the end of the year. And share the video. If you liked it, share it with your friends, your family. Who knows? Let's get a few more people interested in these old movies. I appreciate your viewership. Please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. And until my next review, I look forward to seeing all of you next time.